So Italy's governing coalition has just collapsed. The current Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte, I believe that's how you say that, he has just given a scathing speech before the Italian Senate and is apparently delivering his resignation to the President of Italy today. He's had enough. Apparently, he's kind of lost his coalition partners, so he really doesn't have any power now. He's lost his majority and has no mandate to rule now. And looks like we're headed for new elections. Now, Conte was very upset with the current Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, of the Lega Nord, and squarely put the blame on Salvini for the collapse of this current coalition, because he essentially feels that Salvini feels like he doesn't need Conte anymore. Conte being the current prime minister, Salvini is not satisfied with being the deputy prime minister. He wants to go higher and take him on, so he's decided to essentially pull his support for the government because of selfish political interests. And it certainly looks to me like that's the case. I'm sure that Conte and Salvini had their differences before Salvini decided to enter into the coalition with Conte's party, and that he really was looking to drop him at any opportunity that he could find. But luckily for Salvini, his popularity has increased quite a bit since the last election, and it looks like now he would be able to successfully become the largest party in the next Italian elections. And then, of course, at that point, he would be well set up to form his own governing coalition and become the next prime minister of Italy. So, of course, Conte's not too happy about that, because Conte, I'm sure, for a long time wanted to be the prime minister of Italy, too. And he only got to be it for about a year. But hey, at least it's on his resume now. He can say he was the prime minister of Italy, even if only for a short while, and he wouldn't be the only one. Apparently, there's been a lot of Italian prime ministers who have not lasted very long. Supposedly, I think that's this would be the 62nd Italian government since the end of World War II. So they have their coalitions fall apart pretty regularly, which makes sense. I've never considered Italy to be a particularly stable country. I feel like Italy's only held together because you've got the forces of Western Europe kind of shaming the Italians into staying unified. It's really more Italy's kind of a rough house in a good neighborhood. So yes, onward and upward towards a new government now, which will likely, and of course anything can change, but the way things are looking right now, and certainly the way Salvini is thinking, or else he wouldn't have pulled his support for the current coalition, Salvini will become the next prime minister of Italy. And that will mean quite a few things. That means now that Salvini is not going to be playing second fiddle to anybody. He really is going to be the one setting the agenda, and he's going to be the one setting the priorities of the government. And so, of course, that means that there will be really no more migrants coming into Italy, which Salvini's been pretty strong on that anyway. That's his biggest issue, is stopping the migrants and turning away the boats from Libya and sending them on to France. But that's not all, no. Really, Italy's kind of in a gray area right now in the way that they're operating with regard to the migrants, because, of course, they don't really control their own borders as long as they're in the EU. Really, in reality, they can just kind of try and nudge the migrants away, but it's really hard for Italy to, Italy doesn't really have the power to, say, deport someone who comes from, Germany into Italy, I don't think. I mean, if you look at all those migrants who were given amnesty by Angela Merkel, I don't believe that if they went to Italy, that Italy could send them back to Germany because, they're in the Schengen zone. Or, whoops, slip of the tongue there. I believe it's Schengen, not Shenzhen. Shenzhen, of course, is that city in China just north of Hong Kong where all of the Chinese troops are mounting and sort of threatening to invade Hong Kong. But that's a story for a different day. So back to Salvini as prime minister now. The other big thing that he's known for, other than really being tough on the migration issue, is the issue of financial austerity. Now, Italians are not known for being particularly, fiscally responsible, unlike, say, the Germans. In fact, Italy is one of what's known as the pigs countries, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. And these are the members of the European Union that really are sort of laggards, that are not really economically viable as far as, ideal European states would go, but they sort of can still stick around with a little bit of help, is the idea. Salvini really doesn't seem to want any of the help from the European Union. In fact, he just wants the freedom to go as deep in debt as he possibly can with his country, and rack up and issue as many bonds as he can before really there's a bond of revolt and there's some kind of economic collapse. The EU, of course, puts pretty strong restrictions on member states on how far in debt they're allowed to go and things like that, and they have to go through, EU-mediated restructuring if they accumulate too much debt in a country. That's what the problem that Greece had, and that's why originally, back even before Brexit, there was talk of Grexit, because Greece had too much debt, and they thought, well, maybe Greece could start issuing its own currency and try and inflate its way out of debt. That, of course, would require Greece going off of the euro and back to the drachma. Italy, likewise, has been talking for a while about issuing its own currency. However, they're not calling it that. They're calling them mini-bots, miniature bills of treasury. And these are essentially perpetual bonds that have a 0% interest rate. So that means that it's essentially fiat money. It's a note that you can't redeem in any real money. It'll say that it's a note for, say, the numbers they were giving, like anywhere between 1 to 50 euros. So it would be considered a debt that the Italian government could issue, but they never have to pay it back. And they essentially would use these mini-bots to pay off all of their current debts. But of course, if they were to do so, this would essentially be a competitive currency to the euro, even though it says euro on it. Because a claim to euros that cannot be redeemed can't really be considered equivalent to a euro. It's something completely different. Now, Salvini's been a big fan of this mini-bot thing for a while, and a lot of people have been very scared that it would happen because this would be a huge challenge, obviously, to the dominance of the euro. There's no question that the euro would still be considered a better currency than Italy, but the idea that Italy would try and use something else other than the euro really is a de facto way of leaving the European Union without officially having to go through the troublesome process and going through all the hell that Britain has been put through with Brexit. Rather than seceding from the European Union, it seems that Salvini is going the route of, nullification. Rather than trying to go through the formal process of leaving the European Union, the Italians, I think, once Salvini is elected, you will see a stronger and stronger push just challenging the EU's authority and saying, hey, you guys have made your ruling, now enforce it, because we're not following it. You're going to need to send in your tanks, which, of course, the European Union doesn't have currently, and quash our rebellion. Because we know Article 50 is just a sham. You folks are going to try and put as much strain on us as possible, so we're not going to do it. We're just going to not listen to you and do whatever we want. We're going to print all the money we want, we're going to issue all the debt we want, and we're going to stop all the migrants that we want. And so for that reason, I don't think that under a Salvini premiership you will necessarily see a formal Italexit. You're just going to see this sort of piecemeal rebellion. It's something similar to, I guess, what Viktor Orban did, but a little more brash. Viktor Orban, of course, challenges the EU from the inside and criticizes a lot of what the EU does, but Salvini, I think, is more likely just to disregard the EU and pretend it doesn't exist. But of course, in order to do that, he'll have to become Prime Minister first, so we'll see how this upcoming election goes. If you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and subscribing, and if you do subscribe, please do click the bell, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.